Have you ever wondered why we feel anxious about things that probably won't happen? Or why do we chase happiness only to feel empty when we finally get what we want? What if your brain is wired to keep you unsatisfied and it's not your fault? What if the emotions we rely on to guide us are actually illusions designed by evolution to keep us alive, not happy? That's exactly what we'll unpack in this video. Today we'll explore ideas from Robert Wright's Why Buddhism is True. This book blends Buddhist wisdom with modern psychology to reveal something surprising. Many struggles we face, like anxiety and self-doubt, aren't personal flaws. They're built-in features of human biology. But just because emotions feel real doesn't mean they're true. Imagine your mind as a movie theater, constantly projecting stories about your life. The problem? We get so caught up in these stories that we forget they're just projections. We react as if everything on screen is real, forgetting that we're actually the audience, not the characters. Buddhism and the ideas we'll explore offer tools to step out of that movie, pause, and see the bigger picture. In this video, we'll break this down into 3 parts. First, we'll discuss how evolution wired our brains for survival, not happiness, creating emotional traps. We'll explain why emotions like fear and desire feel so overwhelming, and why they're often illusions. Next, we'll explore meditation, not as a mystical practice, but as a tool to help you step back and observe your thoughts instead of being controlled by them. Finally, we'll dive into one of Buddhism's deepest teachings, emptiness, and how it can completely change how you experience emotions, thoughts, and even your sense of self. Why does this matter? Most of us live reacting to emotions without ever questioning where they come from or whether they're helpful. We assume fear means danger, happiness means success, and dissatisfaction means something's wrong. But what if those assumptions are keeping us stuck? What if you could stop reacting and start responding with clarity and calm? By the end of this video, you'll see emotions in a whole new way, and more importantly, you'll have tools to change how you experience them. Imagine feeling anxious and instead of spiraling into worry, recognizing it as a survival instinct that doesn't have to control you. Imagine chasing success but realizing fulfillment doesn't come from getting more, but from needing less. That's what we're here to talk about today. This isn't about fixing yourself, it's about seeing yourself and your emotions clearly, understanding how your brain works and learning to work with it instead of against it. And the best part? You don't need to meditate for hours or become a monk to benefit. All you need is a willingness to question your thoughts and emotions and maybe, just maybe, start seeing them for what they really are. So, if you're ready to step out of the movie in your head and start seeing things as they are, let's jump into part 1 and explore how evolution set us up for anxiety, dissatisfaction, and emotional traps, and what we can do about it. Why do we feel things so intensely, even when there's no real danger? Could it be that our brains are still living in the Stone Age? Let's figure out how evolution shaped our emotions and why they often make us miserable. The human brain is an incredible machine. It has evolved over millions of years to do one job really well, keep us alive. And it's done that job so well that we now dominate the planet. But there's a catch. The same brain that helped our ancestors survive in dangerous environments also came with built-in software that's outdated for the world we live in today. Imagine our early ancestors living in the wild, constantly scanning their surroundings for threats. A rustle in the bushes could mean a predator. A dark cave might hide danger. These survival instincts kept them alive. Their brains were wired to overreact rather than underreact because for them, assuming the worst could be the difference between life and death. Fast forward to today, and those same instincts are still running the show. The only difference, instead of predators, we now worry about emails, deadlines, and social media likes. Let's say you get a text from your boss that says, "We need to talk." Instantly, your stomach drops, your heart races, and your brain starts generating worst-case scenarios. But here's the thing, there's no actual danger. It could just be about rescheduling a meeting. Your brain, however, doesn't know that. It treats the text like a threat, triggering the same fight-or-flight response your ancestors experienced when facing a lion. This mismatch between ancient instincts and modern life creates what psychologists call evolutionary mismatch. Our brains are running old software in a new environment, And that leads to unnecessary anxiety, overthinking, and emotional overreactions. It's like having a fire alarm that goes off every time someone lights a candle. And it's not just fear. Desire plays a big role too. Think about cravings, whether it's food, money, or success. Our ancestors needed to chase rewards to survive. They craved high-calorie foods because they never knew when they'd find their next meal. But today, those cravings can lead to overeating, stress, and dissatisfaction, because there's always something more to want. To make matters worse, modern technology amplifies these cravings. Imagine scrolling through social media and seeing someone's vacation photos. Your brain interprets this as a status competition, triggering feelings of envy. In ancient times, these feelings pushed us to secure resources. But today, they often leave us feeling inadequate, even though no real loss has occurred. Now, let's talk about emotions. Emotions feel incredibly real because they're designed to grab our attention and push us into action. Fear makes us avoid danger. Desire pushes us to pursue rewards. But here's the catch. Most of the time, these emotions are overblown. They're guesses, not facts. And they're often wrong. Think about this. How many times have you worried about something only to find out later that it wasn't a big deal? Or felt a rush of excitement about a new purchase only to feel disappointed shortly after? That's because emotions are quick fixes. They're meant to solve immediate problems, not to give us long-term satisfaction. Take jealousy, for example. It's an emotion that might have protected our ancestors from losing mates or resources, but today, it often leads to insecurity and resentment. Or think about anger. It might have helped early humans defend themselves, but now it usually escalates conflicts instead of solving them. Another example is guilt. In small doses, guilt can motivate us to make amends. But when it lingers, it becomes toxic, leading to shame and anxiety. In most cases, guilt stems from a perceived failure to meet expectations. Expectations often shaped by society rather than reality. Buddhism has a term for this state of constant dissatisfaction. It's called dukkha. It means suffering, but not in the dramatic sense. It's more like a subtle, ongoing sense that something's not quite right. You know that feeling when you finally achieve a goal, but the excitement doesn't last. That's dukkha. It's the sense that no matter how much we accomplish, it's never enough. Dukkha doesn't just describe physical suffering, it covers mental and emotional discomfort too. Even happiness, according to Buddhism, can be a form of dukkha because we cling to it, fearing it won't last, and often it doesn't. So, what's the solution? According to Buddhism, the problem isn't the emotions themselves, it's our attachment to them. We treat them like facts instead of what they really are, temporary states that come and go. Let's go back to the breakup example. When you're heartbroken, it feels like the sadness will never end. But give it time, and those emotions fade. They're not permanent, they're like waves. They rise, crash, and then disappear. Buddhism teaches us to step back and observe our emotions instead of identifying with them. Instead of saying, "I'm angry," you can say, "I feel anger right now." That small shift creates distance between you and the emotion, making it easier to let it go. Psychologists call this practice cognitive diffusion. It's about seeing your thoughts and emotions as passing events, not as truths. Meditation is one of the best tools for learning how to do this, and we'll talk more about it in the next section. So if our emotions are just tricks played by evolution, how do we stop falling for them? What if there was a way to step outside our emotions and see them for what they really are? That's where meditation comes in, and it's not what you think. What if you could hit pause on your thoughts and emotions, like hitting pause on a movie? Imagine stepping outside your mind and observing what's happening without getting dragged into it. Sounds impossible? That's exactly what meditation can help you do. Meditation often gets a bad reputation. People think it's about sitting perfectly still, clearing your mind and feeling instantly calm. But that's not really how it works. Meditation isn't about stopping your thoughts. Instead, it's about noticing them, seeing them clearly without getting caught up in them. Think of your mind as a busy highway. Cars are zipping past, honking, changing lanes and speeding up. Most of the time we feel like we're in one of those cars, moving fast and reacting to everything around us. Meditation teaches you to step out of the car and sit safely on the side of the road. From there you can watch the traffic go by without chasing after it, and that's the key. You're not trying to stop the traffic. You're just learning to stop letting it pull you along. Let's say you feel anxious about an upcoming meeting. Your mind starts spinning. What if I mess up? What if people judge me? What if I forget what to say? Normally you'd follow those thoughts wherever they go, getting more and more worked up. But meditation helps you recognize that pattern. Instead of thinking, I'm so anxious, you step back and notice, oh, there's anxiety. And that tiny shift changes everything. By naming the emotion, instead of becoming it, you create distance. You start to see your thoughts and feelings as just passing events, not permanent truths. The anxiety is still there, but it's no longer running the show. One of the biggest benefits of meditation is that it creates space between you and your reactions. Instead of instantly responding to a thought or feeling, you learn to pause. And in that pause, you get to decide what to do next. Let's take an example. Imagine someone cuts you off in traffic. Your first reaction might be anger. You honk, yell, and maybe even start tailgating them. But later you feel bad about how you reacted. Meditation helps you catch that moment before it spirals. Instead of reacting automatically, you notice the anger rising and think, there's frustration. And just like that, the grip loosens. The same thing applies to anxiety, sadness, or even cravings. Meditation gives you a moment to step back and ask, is this feeling helpful? Do I need to act on it? Over time, you start responding to life instead of just reacting. This practice is especially powerful for people who struggle with overthinking. Many of us replay conversations, worry about the future, or dwell on past mistakes. Meditation interrupts those loops. Instead of getting stuck in your thoughts, you start seeing them as clouds, drifting in, drifting out, and never staying for long. A lot of people give up on meditation because they think they're doing it wrong. They sit down, close their eyes, and immediately start thinking about what's for dinner or whether they replied to that email. But here's the truth. Thinking is part of the process. Meditation isn't about having a completely blank mind. It's about noticing when your mind wanders and gently bringing it back. Picture this. You're training a puppy. The puppy keeps running off and you keep bringing it back. You don't get mad at the puppy. You just patiently guide it back to where it's supposed to be. That's exactly what meditation is like. Your mind will wander, probably a lot, and that's okay. The practice is in noticing when it happens and starting again. Even experienced meditators have thoughts pop up during their sessions. The difference is they've learned not to judge themselves for it. They see it as part of the practice, not a failure. So if you've ever felt like you're bad at meditating, you're not alone. In fact, you're probably doing it right. If you're new to meditation, it can feel intimidating, but it doesn't have to be. You don't need candles, cushions, or an hour of free time. You just need a quiet spot and a few minutes. Start small. 5 minutes a day is enough to make a difference. Sit in a comfortable position, close your eyes, and focus on your breath. Pay attention to how it feels as you breathe in and out. When your mind wanders, and it will, gently bring it back to your breath. You can also try guided meditations. Apps like Headspace and Calm walk you through the process step by step, so you're never left wondering what to do next. If sitting still feels too hard, try a walking meditation. Focus on the sensation of your feet hitting the ground and your arms swinging as you move. And here's the most important tip: be patient with yourself. Meditation is a skill, and like any skill, it takes practice. You're not trying to be perfect, you're just showing up again and again and learning to be okay with whatever happens. In Buddhism, meditation isn't just about calming the mind, it's about seeing the truth. The truth that thoughts are temporary, emotions are fleeting, and nothing, including ourselves, is as solid as it seems. Buddha taught that suffering comes from attachment, clinging to thoughts, feelings, and experiences as if they're permanent. Meditation helps us let go of that attachment. Instead of grabbing onto every emotion, we start to observe them. Instead of believing every thought, we start to question them. This doesn't mean we stop feeling things, it means we stop letting those feelings control us. We start to realize that emotions, like waves, rise and fall. And when we stop fighting the waves, we can finally start floating. But what's the deeper goal here? Is meditation just about feeling less stressed, or is there something bigger at play? That's where Buddhism's idea of emptiness comes in, and trust me, it's not as scary as it sounds. What if everything you thought about yourself, your identity, your beliefs, even your emotions, wasn't as real or permanent as it feels? What if the labels we use to define ourselves and the world around us are just illusions? This might sound unsettling, but it's actually one of the most liberating ideas in Buddhism. It's called emptiness, or shunyata, and it's the key to letting go of the mental traps that keep us stuck. Let's break it down. First things first, emptiness doesn't mean nothingness. It's not about losing yourself or denying your experiences. Instead, it's about realizing that nothing, including you, has a fixed, permanent identity. Everything is made up of parts, causes, and conditions that are constantly changing. Think of a chair. It's not really a chair. It's pieces of wood, nails, and fabric arranged in a particular way. Take it apart and the chair disappears. The same thing applies to everything else in life, including emotions, thoughts, and even your sense of self. This idea might sound abstract, but it's incredibly practical. Once you see that everything is interconnected and constantly changing, you stop clinging so tightly to things, whether it's a desire, a fear, or an identity. And when you stop clinging, you stop suffering. Imagine you're arguing with someone, and they call you selfish. You feel defensive, maybe even hurt, because you see yourself as a generous person. But what if you paused and looked at that label? Are you really selfish? Or are you a mix of actions and intentions that change from moment to moment? Maybe you've been selfish in some situations and generous in others. By questioning the label, you create space to see the situation more clearly and respond more calmly. Over time, this space gives you the freedom to choose how you act rather than reacting impulsively. One of the most powerful effects of understanding emptiness is that it frees us from attachment, especially to our thoughts and emotions. When you realize that thoughts are just mental events, not facts, they lose their grip on you. Let's say you're feeling anxious about a presentation at work. Instead of getting caught up in the story, "I'm going to fail. Everyone will judge me." You can step back and see the anxiety as just a passing sensation. It's not who you are. It's just something your brain is producing in that moment. This doesn't mean ignoring your feelings. It means seeing them for what they are. Temporary, conditioned responses, and letting them pass without getting swept away. Try this simple practice. When you notice a strong emotion, label it. Say, "This is anxiety," or "This is anger." Then ask yourself, where is this emotion coming from? What's keeping it going? Often, you'll find that it's tied to a belief or expectation that isn't actually true. Take it a step further. Visualize the emotion as a cloud passing in the sky. You don't have to hold on to it or try to push it away, just let it drift by. For example, if you feel fear before speaking in public, imagine that fear as a cloud slowly floating past. You're not trying to erase it, you're observing it without judgment. Over time, this detachment reduces its intensity. Another way emptiness helps is by freeing us from rigid identities. Think about all the labels we carry: student, employee, parent, success, failure. These labels can be helpful, but they can also be limiting. For example, if you see yourself as successful, you might feel pressure to keep achieving so you don't lose that label. And if you see yourself as a failure, you might get stuck in self-doubt and give up too soon. Imagine someone who's always identified as the funny one in their group. They might feel pressure to always perform, even when they're feeling down. But when they let go of that label, they're free to be more authentic, without the fear of letting others down. Similarly, a person labeled as shy might start seeing themselves as more flexible, someone who's quiet in some settings but confident in others. Now, you might be wondering, doesn't emptiness sound kind of depressing? If nothing is fixed, does anything really matter? That's a common reaction, but here's the twist. Emptiness isn't about losing meaning, it's about finding freedom. When you let go of the need to control or define everything, you open yourself up to experience life as it is, without the filters of judgment and expectation. Instead of trying to force happiness or avoid discomfort, you can just be present, and that's where real peace comes from. It's natural to resist this idea at first. We like certainty, we like to feel solid. But what if we embraced flexibility instead? Imagine water flowing around obstacles. It doesn't cling to rocks or fight to hold its shape. It just moves. That's the kind of freedom emptiness offers. So what does all this mean for you? It means that you don't have to keep chasing happiness or running from fear. You can step back, see your thoughts and emotions for what they are, and let them come and go without getting caught up in them. And the more you practice this, whether through meditation, mindfulness, or simply paying attention, the more you'll start to notice a sense of spaciousness and clarity in your life. That's the gift of emptiness. It's not about losing yourself. It's about finding freedom. Think of emptiness as a tool, not an end goal. It's a way of seeing clearly and responding wisely. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack filled with stones. Each stone is a label, an expectation or a fear. Emptiness lets you set the backpack down. The stones are still there, but you're no longer weighed down by them. If this idea resonates with you, take a moment to reflect. What labels or expectations are you carrying right now? What might happen if you set them down, even for a moment? And if this video has given you something to think about, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. So far, we've explored the concept of emptiness, how it reveals that everything, including our identities, emotions, and beliefs, is temporary and interconnected. But understanding emptiness intellectually is just the first step. The real transformation happens when we apply this perspective to daily life. What does it mean to actually live with emptiness? How can this insight shape the way we approach relationships, challenges, and even success? Let's dive into how emptiness can be more than just an idea and actually become a practice. Life is full of changes. Relationships end, jobs evolve, and our bodies age. But most of us resist change because it threatens the labels and attachments we've built. Emptiness teaches us to flow with these changes instead of fighting them. Imagine you lose your job. It's easy to spiral into thoughts like, I'm a failure, or I'll never find another opportunity. But when you approach the situation through the lens of emptiness, you start to question these labels. Are you really a failure, or is this just one moment in a constantly shifting story? You begin to see that your job wasn't your identity. It was just a role you played temporarily. With this mindset, you're more likely to stay open to new opportunities rather than getting stuck in fear. Change, when viewed through emptiness, isn't something to fear, but an opportunity to grow. Think of a tree shedding leaves in the fall. It looks bare, but it's not dying. It's preparing for new growth. Similarly, when we face endings, we're making room for new beginnings. This mindset doesn't erase the pain of change, but it allows us to move through it with less resistance. One of the hardest parts of life is dealing with conflict and emotional pain caused by others. Whether it's betrayal, criticism, or misunderstanding, we tend to hold on to these events, replaying them in our minds and reinforcing feelings of anger or sadness. Emptiness helps us reframe these experiences. When you recognize that other people's actions aren't fixed reflections of who they are, but rather results of their own shifting emotions and circumstances, you stop seeing them as villains. Instead, you see their actions as temporary, conditioned by factors outside their control, just like your own reactions. Imagine a friend cancels plans at the last minute. Your first reaction might be anger. They don't respect me. But what if you pause and consider the bigger picture? Maybe they were overwhelmed with stress or dealing with something personal. When you view their behavior through the lens of emptiness, you start to let go of the personal story you've attached to it. You shift from judgment to understanding. Now imagine this on a larger scale. A family conflict that's lasted for years. Instead of holding on to resentment, what if you saw the conflict as a series of misunderstandings shaped by emotions, past experiences and fears? By practicing emptiness, you can begin to soften the grip of resentment and open the door to forgiveness. We often approach relationships with expectations, hoping someone will make us happy, complete us, or fix something broken inside us. But emptiness reveals that relationships, like everything else, are impermanent and ever-changing. This doesn't mean relationships don't matter. It means we can enjoy them more when we stop trying to make them something permanent. Instead of fearing loss, we can appreciate each moment for what it is. And when relationships end or evolve, we can let go with less pain. Next time you feel tension in a relationship, take a breath and ask yourself, what expectation am I holding on to right now? Often, the tension comes not from the relationship itself, but from clinging to an idea of how it's supposed to be. Imagine how freeing it would feel to let go of the need for control and allow the relationship to unfold naturally. Emptiness also transforms how we handle success and failure. Most people tie their self-worth to achievements. Success boosts our ego, while failure makes us question our value. But if we see success and failure as temporary events, not reflections of who we are, we can respond to them more calmly. Instead of being crushed by failure or addicted to success, we can focus on growth and learning. Imagine winning an award at work. You feel proud, but instead of clinging to that feeling, you recognize it as fleeting. You celebrate it, but you don't let it define you. Later, if you face criticism or failure, you're less likely to see it as a permanent mark on your identity. This perspective helps avoid emotional extremes. Failure isn't the end of your story, and success isn't the peak of it. They're both just chapters in a larger, ever-changing narrative. Living with emptiness doesn't require hours of meditation. It's about weaving mindfulness into ordinary moments. Washing dishes, walking, or even listening to someone talk can become opportunities to practice awareness and let go of judgment. For example, when washing dishes, focus on the sensations, the warm water, the texture of the soap. Notice how thoughts arise and pass, and remind yourself that even this small task is part of life's ever-changing flow. This practice helps ground you in the present moment, reducing anxiety about the past or future. Some people resist emptiness because it sounds unsettling, but emptiness isn't about losing meaning. It's about gaining freedom. It's the freedom to face uncertainty without fear, to let go of what no longer serves you, and to embrace change without losing yourself. Imagine emptiness as the sky, vast, open, and ever-present. Clouds may pass through, but the sky remains unchanged. By adopting this mindset, you can weather life's ups and downs without being overwhelmed by them. So what does it really mean to live with emptiness? It means stepping outside rigid expectations and fixed identities. It means learning to see emotions, thoughts, and situations as passing waves rather than solid walls. And most importantly, it means living with greater flexibility, compassion, and peace. Living with emptiness isn't about erasing meaning from life. It's about discovering a deeper kind of meaning. It's about understanding that everything is interconnected and impermanent. And rather than fearing this truth, we can embrace it as freedom. This mindset allows us to approach challenges with curiosity rather than dread, and to let go of unhealthy attachments that no longer serve us. When we stop clinging to fixed ideas about who we are, what we should have, or how life should look, we make space for new possibilities. Imagine being able to move through life with a lighter heart, knowing that setbacks aren't permanent and successes aren't defining. They're simply moments in an ongoing story. This doesn't mean we stop caring. On the contrary, it means we engage more fully with life because we're no longer paralyzed by fear or weighed down by expectations. Instead, we can appreciate the present moment and respond to challenges with wisdom and grace. Whether you're facing a breakup, career uncertainty, or simply the ups and downs of daily life, emptiness offers a way to move through it all with less fear and more freedom. It's not about giving up. It's about letting go of what weighs you down so you can live more lightly. When we release the need for control, we stop resisting change and start flowing with it. If this perspective resonates with you, try applying it in small ways this week. Notice how often you cling to labels or expectations and practice letting them go, even for a moment. Pay attention to your emotions, observe them instead of identifying with them. Ask yourself, is this feeling permanent, or is it just passing through like a cloud? Another small step is to add moments of mindfulness to your day. Whether it's focusing on your breath, paying attention to sensations during a walk, or simply pausing to notice your surroundings, These practices can ground you in the present and remind you of life's ever-changing nature. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. And let us know in the comments, what's one thing you're ready to let go of? We'd love to hear your thoughts and support each other in this journey toward freedom and clarity. If this perspective resonates with you, try applying it in small ways this week. Notice how often you cling to labels or expectations and practice letting them go, even for a moment. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear this message.